Hello there. Chances are, in the media or on the news, you've come across a certain type of American conservative. They call themselves conservatives, but they're actually a lot more extreme than that usually. You would have known some very well known ones like Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert. The kind of people that when you look at them and you hear what they have to say, you wonder whether or not they have to take their shoes off to count to 20. They tend to be very reactionary, very angry, and they tend to throw tantrums when things happen that they can't control. Or they call it woke, like it's some kind of insult, not understanding what it actually is because they can't define what it is without coming across as racist or sexist, misogynistic. You get the picture. Their kind of rhetoric, though, doesn't tend to work so well here. So, for example, when Bud Light had a trans spokesperson and they're out there shooting it and running it over and having everybody question their masculinity over a beer that tastes like piss, that sort of thing didn't transfer here. But sometimes they do transfer their details and their ideas into idiot receptacles who don't know how to think for themselves in this country. We saw that with some of the protests and Donald Trump flags floating around down there for some reason. We saw that as well earlier in the year when people started to protest Drag Time Story Hour in Auckland Council libraries, which was really weird because it had been going on for years without incident, and then suddenly Americans get all upset about it. These particular type of Americans get upset about it, and it's an issue here. Now, these people say they're great at critical thinking, but clearly they don't know how to think for themselves. And here we have another example of that happening in real time. This is a boycott calling for people to stop going to the warehouse. They also don't understand what a possessive apostrophe is, but that's another issue altogether. You see, the warehouse has some Pride collection items, and there's not a huge amount of them, and they're pretty benign stuff. There's things like Pop Funko toys, a queen-size duvet cover, there's pens, books. It's really basic stuff. And 5% of all sales for this go through to Inside Out, which is the organisation that was actually organising Schools Pride Week that we talked about last week. They've got a little bit of a target on their back because they decided they were going to be part of the group that went to the courts to try and stop the anti-trans talk that happened, that ended up... Just watch the other video, it'll make much more sense. So this group here is now calling... These people are starting to call for a boycott on the warehouse, which is an exact replica of what's happening with Target in the United States, which is kind of like the warehouse. Only difference is Target's kind of folding and saying we're not going to be selling everything in all locations, whereas here the warehouse is just like, I don't give a fuck. These are completely harmless items. What this goes to show you, though, is that that rhetoric that's coming from America that makes no sense to most New Zealanders still is finding an audience here. People who don't think, who leap before they look, and they end up hurting other people when they do that. Something like this, to boycott the warehouse, that's their call. To boycott the warehouse over something like Pride stuff sends a terrible message to the rainbow community and how these people feel about them. Because let's face facts. These people that are getting angry and upset about these things, they're not doing it because they want to protect anybody. They're doing it because they're hateful little trolls. And this is their way of trying to exert some sort of control and some sort of normality to what they think normal is. But clearly they're not the normal ones. They are the ones who are the outliers here. So if somebody comes up to you and says we're boycotting the warehouse because of this, tell them to bugger off. And you can boycott the warehouse for any reason you want, but this is just petty, it's homophobic, it's nasty and evil.